encounter encounters with the supernatural and brushes with mortal danger, as ordinary individuals share their harrowing experiences with the inexplicable and the macabre. Led by Read It, prepare to be gripped by fear as we journey into the heart of darkness. Subscribe now to confront the chilling truths hidden within Reddit's darkest corners.
Not _the_ computers. My most disturbing scary creepy story. There are a lot. One comes to mind. I was a sophomore in college and some two friends and I had heard rumors about an abandoned town in the foothills of the city I was in college at. We loved urban exploring and had already done some really neat stuff, so we figured why not. We packed our flashlights, black attire, and some water, then headed out. It was about 11:30 at night when we arrived. Obviously, you park far away from where you are exploring as to not raise suspicion. It was a bit of a walk down this dark and lonely road, but alas, we arrived at the gate. Now, the entire town was fenced in. In the distance, you could just barely make out a couple buildings fading into the dark. They were small, it seemed. However, we had to find our way in. We had heard the way in was through a tiny hole cut out of a piece of the fence on the side of the hill. To find this path there, it's across from a red house. So we wandered around the area until we spotted a red house. We assumed it was the right one and started trailing ourselves up through thick brush, branches, trees. It was a lot of work to just get in. Finally, the way in. It looked as though someone had sawed through the iron fence. You're hanging onto branches or brush around you because if you let go you'll fall all the way down the hill. We push ourselves through the hole in the fence, wipe the dirt off of our jeans and look up. An entire town. A market center, an apartment complex, houses, streets that branched off into little neighborhoods. We began to explore. We started towards the apartment complex and... what was that noise? It sounded like a beep. Did anyone else hear that? Beep, what is that noise? Beep, well, let's keep walking. So into one of the apartment complexes we go. We searched around and found a mattress and some other random stuff. Okay, cool. But man, that subtle beeping keeps going off. Alright, let's check out another apartment. We opened the door to the next one. We opened the door and the main living room area was filled with black trench coats. Some hung up, some on the floor. We were stupidly curious, so we continued to explore that apartment. We walked upstairs and one of the doors was completely locked. We didn't even try to force it open. We walked out a little freaked. We decided to move on and check out some other places. As we are walking outside, there are now multiple beeps coming from various locations of this part of the town. We began to realize as we walked closer to one building, a beep would grow faster and louder. We suddenly had this feeling as though we were being watched. What made us run out of that area fast was stumbling upon a decrepit old white house. In the front yard was neatly piled shattered glass formed into square shapes leading up to the front door. We knew then something here was not right. As we stared at this and thought to ourselves whether or not we should check it out, a beam of light comes blaring at us through the top floor window and the beeps grow louder and faster. We ran straight across that town. As we are running, bursts of light from various buildings light up and beam on us. It was like someone shining flashlights on you. You can see yours and your friend's shadows running as fast as you've ever run before in your life. My buddy falls, of course, but he is quick on his feet to recover. Together, we assume each knows the way out. Luckily my buddy I was following had it right. I see the hole, my buddy climbs under and is out. I help my next buddy out. I didn't look back, but I could tell by the edge of the light bouncing up and down as I stood still helping my buddy slide through the hole that we were being chased. I crawl under the small hole, slide down the hill hitting some branches and scratching myself up pretty good. We run quickly down that old road. It seemed so dark with all the lights in our eyes, and so quiet. We see the car in the distance, the beeps fading in the background. We get in it and drive away. 3 months later we drove by the gate. It was torn down. We walked in and everything in the town had been demolished. There were some construction crews nearby and we asked them about the place. The construction man we talked to explained that it was a hot center for gangs. Drugs, murders, all of that went down inside and it wasn't uncommon. The city had finally decided to just tear it down. Although that's not very scary or creepy, I figured it was good. I have more stories if you're at all curious. Thanks for reading. First story post on Reddit. TLDR, found abandoned town and was almost killed by a gang I think. Deleted user. Sorry for the length of this, but it was spooky enough of an experience for me to write it. While I was deployed in Kosovo, my team did a lot of night missions that required us to cover a great deal of ground in a short period of time in order to make our extractions, all of it while remaining undetected by anyone in the areas that we would pass through. We would always seem to see odd things during the night, but nothing like this. During one of our recon missions, we had started by getting dropped off in a remote location to identify whether shipments of mortar rounds and mines were being moved through the area. Our extract was going to be before daybreak and we needed to make it just over 17 kilometers. The terrain wasn't too overgrown and we had good intel over the area, and it was either a full moon or close to it, of course it would be for this story, so unless we encountered somebody, this was going to be an easy night. Our team was normally only 4 men, but we had the opportunity to make this a good training run for some of the new guys and we took on an extra 3. We still wanted to make sure we played it safe though, so I took rear security and, we'll call him Hell, took the position just in front of me. We both worked great together and could easily manage to cover our team, if needed. We moved about 10k through our mission area without finding anything, and had made good time doing it. At this point, we needed to start heading for our extraction point, which was located over a good-sized hill and then through an area that was near a village, but not too close. We regrouped, did a count of people, ammo, and supplies and moved out. Being rear security, I was the last to move, and just as I was about to take off, I heard a noise in the trees maybe 50 meters off. I turned and saw L looking at the direction as well, he had heard it too. Everyone else was still moving, since the new guys were in the middle and were not used to looking back every 20 m to spot your security. We were getting left. Chances were that the noise was nothing more than a deer, but L and I started moving out, using a 2-man bounding technique. We kept hearing a noise, so I told L to reach the team, while I remained in place after our next bound. I found a place with cover and he bolted after the team. I heard the noise again, and then saw trees move about 15 m in front of me. Everything stopped. 2 minutes went by with me being very quiet, controlling my breathing and watching my front and sides. L and my team were slowly making their way to engage whatever had been following us. They came up on the sides and surrounded the area I signaled to. Once in position, I moved up. Nothing, not footprints, tracks or any sign that something had been there. Cue the guys giving L and I a hard time for getting left alone and scared, good-hearted fun of course. We move out again. Again, I am the last to move, with L between myself and the next man to the front. This time, no noises when I step away. After about 2k, we come up to an orchard that we need to move through. The light from the moon was really bright and the trees were spaced, so we used them for cover as we stayed near the middle of the orchard. Just before I enter, I hear the noise again. This time, I thought I heard a little girl giggling. Not something that my imagination would make up on its own. I was expecting wildlife, if anything. This time, L had taken off an additional 20 m and turned to wait for me. I moved to my location and he moved out again. I was crouched next to a tree watching for anything. All of a sudden, the tree I was next to caught my attention. In the knots on the tree, I could see a face that looked like a person. As I squinted and looked more closely, a little girl's face appears and she turns at me smiling, waving a little hand and giggles, not maliciously, then disappears back into the tree. I am in absolute shock at this point, and there is not a chance in hell that I am going back to my team to report what I just saw. So instead, I bolt and catch up to L, and keep my mouth shut. Recognizing that I likely have lost my mind, I am not going to talk about anything. We hit our extract and leave. 2 weeks go by, and I am told that I am needed to provide security for a team of combat engineers who are going through an area I am familiar with. In the meantime, my team was going to be going through the area we were in 2 weeks ago where L and I got scared, everyone laughing. Again, I never said a word to anyone about what I saw. In my mind, I am quite happy about not going back there. So, I go out with the engineers and help them find a minefield that had been recently laid, in an area that kids walk through every day, and they take care of informing the village nearby, while starting to blow the mines in place. I really appreciate the engineers and the work they did out there. I get back and am taken to see my commander and told thanks for the work. Feeling great, I head back to my barracks room, a place I rarely get to visit, and see that none of the guys are back yet. No sooner than taking my boots off, the door opens and I hear everyone laughing as they enter. L is not laughing and telling everyone to screw themselves. One of the other guys sees me and blurts out, "Hey man." L says he isn't going on patrol with us anymore in your favorite spot. I just grimace and wait for stuff to calm down. A couple of days later, L and I are out playing babysitter to some scouts. He says, "What did you see that night?" I shrug and say, "I don't know. Just my imagination getting the better of me." He then says something that sends chills up my spine, "I know you saw her." I saw her too. Tell me I am not crazy. I felt numb, and just said, "You're not crazy. Where did you see her?" He said, "Inside a tree." I had never given any information to L about what I saw, or details that could have led for him to come up with the same conclusion. When I saw the girl in the tree, L was 40 m away from my location and could not have even seen me looking at the tree. Wyatt Shale. My mom and I were on a walk around the neighborhood when I was in high school. It was summer and there were a ton of frogs making noise trying to mate. However, in front of one house, hear what sound like a human screaming for help. It kept going, like a video playing the same 3-second clip of a woman screaming over and over. We shrugged it off initially as he'd left the TV on, but we felt really weird about it for the rest of the walk. When we came back by the house, we could still hear the noise. Some of our other neighbors had the house key to this place. The owner was old widower and they went by from time to time to do housework stuff he had difficulty with. We went over there, told them what we heard and that it seemed kind of weird but was nothing. They agreed to go check on him since they hadn't heard from him in a few days anyway. The poor old man died 2 weeks prior. The neighbor didn't hear any sounds besides the damn frogs. Still gives me the creeps to this day. Cento 100. My dad and auntie have told me this one separate events and both accounts were the same. When my dad was about 16 in the late 70s, he and my auntie were waiting in my grandparents' waiting room at the front of the house just outside my grandparents' bedroom where my great-grandfather lay dying. The room had 3 exits, one that leads to my grandparents' bedroom, one that lead to the rest of the house and the door that lead to the front garden. And there was no breeze at all, especially from anywhere in the house. My auntie felt cold so got up to close and lock the previously ajar wooden door and sat down. About 3 minutes later my grandmother let out a wail as my great-grandfather died, and at that exact moment, as both my auntie and father testify, the sturdy wooden door flew open, swung outwards, and slammed shut as if someone stormed out of the house angrily. It couldn't have been wind, as the way the door opened and closed was exactly how an enraged person would slam a door. I've asked them separately and they both give the exact same details. Canadiasian. Late to the show, but last December, a little before Christmas, my friend and I were driving home after our final exam. There's a red light at a major intersection up ahead and I begin to slow down. I came to a complete stop in the right/sidewalk lane of a 4-lane street, 2 each direction, facing southbound with 6 cars in front of me, and I'm stopped with a side street to my right. Suddenly I hear tires screeching and a crash. I got hit rear right of my car by another driver. We get out, exchange information and begin to take pictures of our respective vehicles. I look up the street to make sure I have a few hundred meters between myself and any vehicles approaching from the north before I step into the left southbound lane so I can get a picture showing the angle of both of our cars and the street signs, which are rear right/northwest intersection of the side street. My friend calls me over to unlock the trunk so he can get paper from his pack to write down his witness statement, and just as I step back into the right lane my car occupies, a northbound driver who was so occupied with observing our collision drifts into the left southbound lane which I just stood in and missed me by about a foot. He was traveling probably about 70 kilometers per hour, that's 43 mph. 2 days later I go paintballing with aforementioned friend and a few others. In between games you go into the lobby with your mask off and everyone is supposed to put their paintball marker, gun, on safe and have a barrel cover over the muzzle. I'm leaning against a wall in the lobby when previous friend asks if he can borrow money to buy more paint. My back is still leaning against the wall but I lean to the right to hand him my wallet. As I put it in his hand I hear a loud splat against the wall I'm on. I look to find a paintball fired at where my head/eyes should have been had I not moved. Somehow one of the kids across the room was putting his marker down on a table and the barrel cover's retention bungee snapped, allowing the cover to fall off, the safety broke and the marker fired around. A paintball to the eye at 250 frames per second could have been a game changer, to say the least. 2 days later, I'm out drinking with the friends I went paintball with and some others. We're walking down a major street and I'm naturally a fast walker, so every 25 meters I'm stopping, turning back and waiting for everyone to catch up. At one point, I look back and see everyone is still pretty far back, but it's cold and we're practically at our destination, so instead of stopping to wait I decide to just keep walking ahead. Then for some reason I decide to stop and shout back to them I'll meet them inside. Just as I do so, I hear a loud engine roaring up the street and turn to see a speeding Porsche 10M in front of me hit the west wall of a building literally at a right angle so hard that more than half of his engine compartment caved in, his airbags deployed and the windows all shattered. Had I kept walking without saying anything to my friends, I probably would have been between the car and the building. 2 days later it's Boxing Day morning. I was in and out a few times throughout the night because I was excited to go pick up some items with my friend, the same one from the collision/paintball/night out. At one point through the night I have a nightmare of the sorts. The earliest part of the dream I can remember is me leaping out of a panel door van with a rope in my hand. I have no idea why, but in the dream my mind knows that someone is trying to kill me. As my feet hit the ground I find myself in my driveway. I run inside the house and for some reason tie the rope to the front door's doorknob, knowing that on the other end of the rope is the killer tied to it. I lock and barricade all of the doors and windows to the house and call 911. The operator tells me every officer is busy with something and no one can come help me. I hang up the phone and am about to call the someone else when I notice the rope has been cut. Trying to stay silent and listen for the killer, I suddenly notice everything that can possibly make sound in the house is given: kettle, stove, fan, toilet, shower, TV, radio, everything. I look up at the top of the stairs and see someone's foot hit the first step and start walking downstairs. I wake up screaming and sweating, and the first words out of my mouth before I can even think to process it as a dream are, Slender Man. TLDR. Almost died 3 times IRL and had a dream Slender Man was trying to kill me all in 1 week.